Hello, I'm Regina McCann Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management, and welcome to our Women in Wealth series. And today I have a new friend with me. And Beth, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and what you love about what you do?
Absolutely. So, Regina, thank you so much for having me. I am Beth Brodovsky. It's a great name for Google, but really hard to say. So, I run a company called Iris Creative. We actually next month are going to be 26 years old, which I can't even believe.
Wow, that's
And
incredible.
people always say to me, "Wow, how you've done the same thing for all this time." And I say, my company's a year older than Google. So no, we haven't done the same thing for all the time. The world has changed so much. And that's one of the things that I really love about the work that we do. So we are a brand strategy firm. And what that means is we help organizations get really, really clear on out of all of the audiences they could potentially reach, who are the ones that will help them thrive? How do you put your most important people at the center of your circle and draw people into your circle rather than filling up six different buckets that are sort of leaking out as you're going through your marketing? So we help people really get clear on their audience. We help them clarify their message, which means the words and the language and what they're going to do. We help them design and develop their image, which might use graphic design work, logo work, identity work. And ultimately, we're very interested in making sure that all of that ties together. So the things that you promise and who you say you are show up in how people experience you, from the programs that you create to the marketing that you put out there, to the copywriting, to you, the person who answers the phone in the customer service. Are you delivering on the experience you promise? And we work with typically institutional organizations, and that means often the nonprofits of all varieties, associations, colleges, schools, healthcare, museums, human services, kind of everything that might fall under the umbrella of organizations that are trying to attract the right people, engage them and get them excited to be involved, and then ultimately inspire them to give back. So that's what we do.
Wow, that's impressive. I love it. And your website's very cool too. I mean,
Thank
very
you.
impressive website. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and some really cool names on there that I recognize. So that's
There's people always say to us, geez, how do you make any money working with nonprofits? And, I tell them, Wharton of the University of Pennsylvania is a nonprofit. Um, all the universities are nonprofits. Most of the healthcare systems are nonprofits. Museums, like, nonprofits aren't often. The NFL is a nonprofit, not
yeah,
our
no, that
client, but the
yeah, that's
NFL is an
questionable
association.
though.
Yeah, right.
Questionable on that one.
So there's so many things that are institutional organizations that have both the need to market and promote their services and the need to, like, gather that community together, keep them engaged so that ultimately they fund the work that they're doing. So that continuum is just so interesting to me.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. That's so cool. And especially like, I love how you're pointing out that nonprofits can be, universities and hospitals and down to, the Red Cross. Like and
Yeah.
there's such a different variety of different types of nonprofits.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I always say nonprofits technically, people always say, well, nonprofit is a tax structure. But in the work that we do, it's not just that it's about a tax structure. It's about a mission-driven mindset. And even for, like, we have a few for-profit clients that we work with, because if you have a mission-driven and a vision-driven mindset, even though you're not technically asking for donations, you're
Mm.
asking for people to believe what you believe, to value what you value, and join you on a journey to make something happen in the world together. And,
Mhm.
like, that's the story we like to tell. That's what we like to do. We often say that, like, what our role is to build a bridge between your mission and your marketing, because what happens a lot at organizations and probably companies too is, you'll get together for an afternoon or a weekend and do strategic planning. You probably see this in your work. People sit down and do a plan, and then that plan gets saved on a drive somewhere. And then they start being busy, like, oh, we should have this event, oh, we should do this program. And your marketing, there's a great writer called Michael Gerber who talks about a seizure of marketing. Somebody walks into your office with a why aren't we on TikTok idea, and everyone scrambles because it's usually somebody with some power that says that, or not, or you see what like your 12-year-old kids into, and there's that like swinging from limb to limb feeling of like, well, we better get to the next thing, and we better get there first, and we better get there early, because if we don't, like, there's not gonna be any space for us.
Right.
And so in doing that, the marketing can sometimes wander off into whatever bright idea somebody had last. And at the end of the year, if you ever pull back out your strategy, your plan, it's can be so hard to see how all the things that you did that kept you busy and exhausted you and spent all your money actually are moving these maybe 3 to 5 big things forward. And so the work I really love to do is helping people reconnect with that and rethink about, okay, yes, you're going to do all these different things, but can we pull a few things out and focus on them this year to make sure that the lift that you're looking to get to has the best chance of happening?
Wow. And I can hear the passion in your voice while you're talking about it. So it is obviously a true love for you for what you're doing.
It is. I do. I mean, I love what we do. I mean, it wasn't my plan. And I'm sure other people finally find this too. It's not like I went to college and said, I want to major in nonprofit branding. Like, believe it or not, I actually guest lecture at a course in Wharton on nonprofit branding now. But
Cool.
1980s, they didn't have anything like this.
Yeah.
In the 1980s, we were told, tape a hair across the zipper of your portfolio, and when you drop it off in Madison Avenue, that way you'll know if anybody ever unzipped it when you pick it up. Like, that was the sum total of the business advice. And I was an illustration major in college at one of the top universities for design and illustration in the world. The top
Wow.
10 college. I was very lucky that I had an opportunity to go to an amazing program, and I got an amazing education. But at the time, nobody ever said, PS, if you're an illustrator, there's not really jobs for that. And if there's not a job for that, that means you're going to have to freelance. And if you're going to have to freelance, PS, that means you own a business. And if you own a business, that means you have to sell and do bookkeeping and taxes.
Oh.
No idea. No idea. Like, you learn all that on the fly.
Yeah, the things they don't teach you in
The
college.
things, and they're a little bit better now.
Yeah.
But it's funny because my daughter-in-law teaches a class, an illustration for design, like an illustration and design class. And she often invites me to come down now and be a guest speaker. And she always says things like, well, Mom, be real, but don't be too real. Like, be
Don't
real, but like be positive.
don't scare
And I
these
really
kids.
believe that there is a way, like, look at, I love what I do, but there's a way to love what you do and do it in a way that you can make a living.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that means building a skill set that you're not taught in college, no matter what your background is. I mean, definitely not artists, but I bet we're not the only ones that don't really get the full package when we're in school to help us do what we do as independent entrepreneurs.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And even with most careers that you go through college with, you learn more on the job than you did in college that would really apply and help you to be a better, work person in that field.
Absolutely. One of my favorite questions to ask people. So we also teach nonprofit marketing classes online. And a lot of times I'll ask the people who are attending the classes, what did you major in college? Because a lot of times the people that end up in-house in a nonprofit doing marketing are somebody that kind of, I always say, did you say yes to changing one thing on the website and now your title is like development director / marketing director?
Yes.
Because that's what happens. But I find that it's not just nonprofits. Lots and lots of small businesses are writing these job descriptions for their marketing person that's like this wide and this tall and do everything that we could possibly come up with. And it's brutal. And I can't tell you how many people that work in nonprofits that do marketing are theater majors. So hire those theater majors. Those people can get stuff done. My brother always says the reason theater majors are so good is because people say, hey, we're going to put on a show. There's no plan. there's no budget and there's no time, but you have to make it happen. And theater majors do.
Yeah.
So hire a theater major.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and that's actually true for a lot of other majors. I know a lot of
Mhm.
people, like when I went to one of the college counseling classes in my when they were in high school, the kids, one of the college counselors said, hey, how many of you are in the field where you got your degree in?
Yep.
And there were probably, 70 people in the auditorium, and maybe two people raised their hands.
I had that
So,
exact same that experience in at NYU when my
yeah.
son was looking at colleges. We were in that, I always say we're in a room of 300 super intense kids and they're even more intense parents.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
three people raised their hand to say that their job matched their job title today matched what they majored in college. And the
Yeah.
best thing that that person ever did was say, kids, look around the room. You're
Mhm.
here. My mother told us you go to college to learn how to learn. The challenge today is that without a degree name that matches a job name, it can sometimes be hard to get your first job, but it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that it's not worthwhile doing because
Yeah.
there's a way into a first job. And the things that you learn in a liberal arts degree or religious studies or something, philosophy, poli-sci major, ton of nonprofit marketers were poli-sci majors. So you never know. I always say that in an art, I got a degree in communication design and illustration. And what I learned in college was how to solve problems.
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
that's the main thing that I got is how to understand what someone else's problem is and use the tools of visual language in order to solve those problems. In my job, I had to learn that my language wasn't the same language as their language. And so I had to learn to be a translator. But you don't walk out of school knowing everything. I tell my kids all the time, your college degree is really important until you get the next 4 years experience. Once you have 4 more years experience, those 4 years define what you're going to, what people are looking to your resume to do next. So if you don't love what you do, you got to get out of it before 4 years.
Yeah. 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 No, that's great advice. That's really good advice, actually.
Yeah.
So you have had a very impressive, run with your company. But I'm very always curious about what are some of the challenges that you have faced as a professional woman.
The feeling of sitting inside your company like you're holding the box together with
Yeah.
string and tape and praying to God. I mean, for me, and I don't know if it has anything to do with being a woman.
Mhm.
I think that there's a lot of things that probably women have in common, but I think that there are aspects of the business culture today and society that have a tendency to overcorrect, you
Okay.
know? Um, and as somebody that raised two sons, I don't want to live in a world where we become women are special little snowflakes and we're different and so unique that there's no way that the services that are out there for everyone could potentially address all the things that a woman goes through. I absolutely have gotten so much benefit out of women's networking groups and women mentors and different people, but I don't want to live in a world where women good, men bad.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. No, no, true,
like
true,
I
true.
love the idea that like we all have these same problems. I look at these problems through the lens of being a woman because I have not yet had the opportunity of walking this world as a man. Who
Yeah.
knows what the future holds? Um, but um, but for myself in this profession, I mean, one of the things that I mean, maybe it's being I used to think it was because I was an artist and so I was from an
Mhm.
art and a creative mentality, but over the years of talking to other women, it doesn't seem to be the case that the imposter syndrome, the
Mm.
for me the biggest thing that I've had to struggle with is resistance to making a mistake because I equated a mistake to failure. Hands down, out of
Oh.
all of the problems, that's been probably my number one. And I do believe over the years, being reluctant to make a mistake has also made me reluctant to try things that could either result in a failure or be perceived by anybody as a mistake. And I've had to
Yeah.
work really, really hard to get over that. I often joke that I have my dad, who's also an entrepreneur, sitting on this shoulder saying, say yes and figure it out later. And my mom is sitting on this yet letter saying, debt is a 4-letter word. right? So I have these like completely different mindsets. My dad's
Oh,
charge forward, get a lien against the house. My mom is a
oh,
librarian that wants everything in
yeah.
order,
Hmm.
and wants to know, she wants the checkbook balanced. My dad says profit, my mom says cash flow. And I have
Yeah,
both of these voices in my
that's
head all the
great.
time. And so figuring out like what's my voice, what's right for me, among these two people and many other mentors that I have greatly respected, over the years, you have to I don't know what other people do. I've had to work through envy. I
Mhm.
wish I had their business. Oh, why?
Mm.
And despondency. Why is everybody else able to figure it out and I can't figure it out? Because it's so easy to be sitting in your desk chair and you only see the polished public version of what people want you to see. You don't see, you don't see the duck with the feet making cream
Mhm.
under the water,
Oh, yeah.
of how things are. And there are so few people in the world who, when you say, wow, it looks like things are going great for you, will actually say, let's have coffee. Let me tell you what's really happening. People don't do it. I was lucky in my first couple of years of business. I was lucky in so many ways, but
Mhm.
I was lucky that I found an amazing business mentor that for the first 2 years of my business, I worked part-time in her office and watched what she did. And she gave me the best advice at some point. She said, Beth, working for me isn't starting a business. Freelancing isn't starting a business. Getting your own clients and figuring out your way to do things is starting a business. And so it's time for you to go.
Oh.
Oh, it was really hard. It was
But
really
she
hard.
was giving you tough love
She
and
kicked me out of
yeah,
the nest,
yeah,
basically.
yeah.
But in doing so, but she did that with, okay, I'm going to set up an appointment with you with my bookkeeper, and he's going to show you how we structure our books. I had 2 years to see how she organized her files online. I was coming from an in-house job, so I had never worked at an agency, so I had
Mhm.
never done the manage multiple clients, manage multiple jobs.
Right,
I mean, I
right.
managed a lot of projects. We had 40 different products. I managed all of those, but they were all for one client and I had one boss. So I could say, sorry, the boss said this has to be done now and your project isn't going to wait, is going to wait until tomorrow. When you have multiple clients, whole different ball game.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. That's great. That's great stuff. I mean, and it's like, the little birdies have to leave the nest, but it's difficult.
It was really hard. And like, I feel like, it's funny. My son is trying to start a business now, and I try and balance, like, it's going to get easier with like, actually, you know, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to go to, in many cities across the country, there's the Goldman Sachs program called
Oh
10,000
yeah.
Small Businesses.
Yeah.
And honestly, the best thing about the business is the community, is about the program, is getting together and spending 13 weeks with other entrepreneurs. And so in that program, we did this one exercise that was just so amazing. So the program invites people in that are you have to be 2 years old, you have to have two employees, and you have to have at least $250,000 in sales to kind of be at the benchmark. But people in at least my group had businesses that were family businesses that they didn't start and they inherited and
Hmm.
were maybe 4 million. So
Okay.
to me, I'm like, oh, so that's a small
Yeah,
business.
that's a small
But yeah,
business.
small
Okay.
businesses, but they're still multi-million dollar businesses.
Right,
And so
right.
they had us do this exercise. They gave us a blank piece of paper and a crayon, because there's something about being given a crayon that makes it seem like lower stakes. It's just kids, this is a game, this is play. And they said, draw an x-axis and draw a y-axis.
Hmm.
And then privately, from the day your business started to now, draw a line about where your revenue has been in all different crazy colors. It was a literal, and that's it. No numbers, no words, no points, an X and a Y and a curve. And then we all went up to the wall and put them up on the wall at the exact same time. So there was no way you could tell whose curve was who. And there was every shape curve possible. And my takeaway from that is, and yet we're all still here.
Yeah.
Not only we're all still here, but we're here and at a point where we can take a day and a half a week for 13 weeks to come and do this program away from our businesses. So while we've all had highs, we've all had lows, we may be in one of those highs or lows at the moment. Like, it's the incremental stuff. And as entrepreneurs, I feel like we're so constantly encouraged to grow, and to grow. When you're encouraged to grow, you're encouraged to look to the future. So
Right.
our eye is always on tomorrow, on next week, on 5 years, on 10 years from now. And I personally have found that if I narrow my focus and only look ahead, I constantly feel like I'm behind. I
Right.
constantly feel like I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I have so much further to go. And I'm at the point now where I'm like, I don't have that much more time to get there. So I've had to work really hard to cultivate a practice of looking back as well, and
Smart.
spending some time in the moment, some time in the past, and some time in the future. If I don't have all of those things covered, I never look back and see how I had an employee who came to work for me and wasn't happy. And in talking to her multiple times, she finally said, I don't want to be a graphic designer anymore. And I said, well, what do you want to be? She said, I really want to be a UX designer. And so we developed a plan to help release her in a way that allowed us to bring in her replacement, and nobody was left with a hole. And so I was able to give her a great recommendation, a review, referral on the phone. And 2 jobs later, she's now working for Facebook.
Oh my
And I feel
gosh,
like if
that's
I'd
awesome.
clung to her, if
Yeah.
I'd held on, if I'd treated her like she was mine,
Right.
she wouldn't have found the job that she found. And 3 years after she worked with me, we were all invited to her wedding. So
Oh,
I look back and
yeah.
I see the jobs that I created for other artists that weren't capable of generating revenue for themselves, jobs that I created for people that maybe knew what they wanted, but changed and shifted and helped shepherd them along to their other careers, the change, that the revenue that we've helped create for these nonprofits that allows them to go out and serve the communities that they exist to serve. You've got to take a moment, even though you're still on that journey. If you don't pause and say, look at this culture I've created, look at these jobs I've created, look at this work that's happened, that's because we said yes to doing this hard work. It can get really depressing.
Yeah.
But if you stay there, like, if you like, look at all I've done,
Yeah.
I've had some times where I've been static, and I'm like, well, thank God, at least I got to here. And now I'm just focusing on this. And I've kind of got lost in my mission, got lost in my vision. And I found that I kind of devolved into unhappiness. So for me, and I don't know if it's true for other people, I have learned, maybe it's the yoga teacher side of me, to spend time regularly, reflecting on the past, looking to the future, but like being in the moment.
Right. Right. That's beautiful. Beautiful sentiment. Beautiful. So you have a lot of energy and a lot more to accomplish, but let's take a time machine and
Uh-huh.
think about what your retirement vision could be. What do you see when you
I
see your
love
retirement
this
vision?
question. So I'm 56, and so the idea that retirement's going to happen someday is starting to loom in my life. I'm,
Yeah,
because I look 5 years and 10 years ahead, and I am starting to think about, how long do I want to work? What does work need to look like? What do I want to do? And what does retirement look like for me? Does retirement look like a nonstop travel? Does as a business owner, I have 2 grandchildren, and I'm hoping for a few more.
good for you.
I've already learned that I need to be busy enough that I'm not expected to be daycare.
Oh, there
Not
you go.
not necessarily the vision for everyone, but
Mm,
for me, I love compartmentalized helping.
yeah, yeah.
I want to make sure that I have stuff going on. I'm lucky that I have amazing role models in parents. My father owned a company. And I often joke, because they always said to me, how did we get an artist as a kid? My father, ran a paper company, and my mother was a librarian and project manager. And now in retirement, my father has become a woodworker, making beautiful, beautiful bowls. And
Ooh,
my mother is a quilter. So now I say, how do we get these artists as parents? And they remind me every day that, like, with retirement, something new can start. My dad dabbled a little bit from the time he was in his 60s. His father was a woodworker. And
Mm,
so things that he did a little bit that he really didn't have time to do,
right.
um, when he was working, have now bubbled up. My mother was somebody that volunteered always. So, everyone worried that my father was going to retire and have a heart attack
Oh,
because, this thing that consumed his life
right.
was gone. And what I
Oh,
feel like I've learned from him is that when your cup isn't overflowing, when your cup is empty, that you can choose to find new things to fill it with. And so right now, what I'm trying to do is explore some of the different things. When I was 52, I went and got my yoga teacher certification.
nice.
52, like with these kids that
Nice.
were younger than my own children.
I
But I
love it.
decided that it didn't matter, that it was what
Yeah.
I wanted to do and that I would come up with my own version of it. So I know I would love to travel, but I also know I want to be here enough that I'm accessible to my grandchildren. But I do envision, at least for a little while, a working retirement. And my kind of personal dream at the moment that I'm starting to begin to work on is I I have a lot of energy, but I also, I talk in a way. I mean, so probably you can probably hear the yoga teacher a little bit in the way I talk. I am interested in all things related to creating, the entrepreneurship, the journey that I've went on, and how other people are finding their space to breathe, how other people are bringing practices into their lives that allow them to create a sustainable business, that give them the energy to, like the samurai, they call it the samurai code, fall down 7 times, get up 8, because that's what entrepreneurship is like.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm curious about that. And so I'm actually right now I just got back from our yoga retreat in Peru, and it very much inspired me that this may be the time to start dabbling in pulling together a group of entrepreneurs that are interested in that. I call it breathe into business. So how do
Mm.
I'm probably going to do a podcast because I did one for 5 years and they're so much fun. So one thing that I want to do is pull together a community of entrepreneurs who are struggling and maybe trying to figure out different pathways, different practices they can use to manage their stress and restore their energy and get up that 8th time.
Yeah.
And then another thing that's sort of a personal passion that we're doing, we're actually having our having it in a couple of weeks. So I'm on the board of a technology and arts high school. I don't know if other people in the country have these schools where, they started out with, welding and electrician and, trade, like it's a trade school.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in our trade school is a graphic design program, which,
Ooh,
is it a trade? Is it not a trade? It's a profession. I'm not really
yeah.
sure how you would define it. Most of our kids end up going on to college, but over the years, when I went away to college, my parents were like, oh my God, she likes to draw, but how is she going to make a living doing it?
Yeah.
I wanted to be a doctor until I took 11th grade chemistry and discovered that doctor probably wasn't in my future. Did not understand it and had a massive crisis at 11th
Yeah.
grade. Like, I wanted to be a doctor since I was 8. Now I don't think that's possible. What am I going to do? And I was
Oh,
blessed with an amazing art teacher who said, you can do art as a job. And, that was 1983, 84, when art, like I never heard of graphic design. I like the words for jobs did not exist. And what happened is that I had a son who ended up doing ROTC in college. And
mm,
so the first summer after ROTC, they flew all these kids out to California to a Navy base to say, you're going to spend a week with the Marines and a week with air and a week on a sub and a week on a surface ship. Okay, kids, what did you like? Next summer, oh, you liked the Marines? All right, you're going to go spend 3 weeks with the Marines now. My son ended up picking surface ships and he spent 3 weeks on a surface ship and was like, the pilots seem to be the ones on the surface ship that are and so then the next summer the Navy helped him winnow down his choices to figure out what direction he wanted to go. And the
wow.
Navy can do that because when my son was 19, he signed commitment papers. The rest of us don't have that luxury.
Right.
So I want to help kids who love art figure out whether doing it as a job is the right path for them. Because for many people who love something, art being one of those things, doing it as a job destroys your soul or breaks your love of it. My father doesn't sell a single one of his pieces that he makes in woodworking. They are stunning and
Oh,
100% sellable. That's not why he does it. He doesn't need the money. It's not why he does it. So
yeah.
I want kids to start learning about all the many different ways they could have art in their life, whether
Mhm.
it's a career or personal, and whether going to art school is right for them or not.
Right.
So we're putting together these panel discussions with a sculptor and a ceramicist and an illustrator and a cartoonist and a videographer, so that kids can hear from and then have one-on-one conversations with people that do art for a living. And I think the next thing that we're going to do is all the people that say to us, well, we'd love to be on your panel, but we're too far away. I think I'm going to create a YouTube channel and
Yes.
start doing interviews like this to create a bank of stories so that young people can start to see themselves and see different pathways and things that can be done. And also so that parents can start to see the pathways that are possible for their child and
Yeah.
can learn to support them and encourage them in whatever their path may be.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Oh my gosh. I am already thinking of like a couple parents who I'm like, oh, they need to see you. They need
Well,
to
you're
see you.
local to me, so
Yeah.
we're doing our next one on November 2nd in Plymouth Meeting.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I'll have to get some more information on that. I have a couple people I can possibly introduce you to for that.
Yeah. And the funny thing about it is, I got this idea coming out of this work that I'm doing with this school and going to open houses and the volunteer work that I do. But when I came back and pitched this idea to my team, and as I'm sure anybody who's watching this can see, I pitch a lot of ideas to my team. Half the
Mhm.
time they're like, oh, geez, you know, like
Here she
I
goes
have a lot
again.
of ideas. Not all of them are worth following up on.
Right.
And so I'm
Right.
blessed that I have a team that is really good at keeping those checks and balances and giving me feedback. But when I pitched this idea, their eyes lit up. And the
Yeah.
cool thing about it is that we have this thing that we're all doing volunteer. The company is funding whatever little bits need to be funded about it. We're purposely keeping it simple so that it doesn't consume our time and our money. But that when we're working on it, the energy and how it lights up my team because we picked something that all of us think is important, it's really been fascinating to watch how bringing something other than work, and it's not work and it's not play, it's something in the middle, it's something values driven
Yeah.
that really helps us showcase what's important to us together and to the world. How that's really helped transform our culture has been really magical.
Wow. That's all I can say is just wow. I'm so impressed. Impressive. So if people want to learn more about you and what you're doing, how do they find you?
So I'd love to talk to people, clearly. So I am at Iris Creative, www.iris creative.com, or Beth, Beth at Iris Creative. I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. And I'm sure in your show notes will be the spelling of my name. The
Yes.
beauty of my name is I'm the only one. So on LinkedIn, we're doing some really fun things on Iris Creative Group Inc. on Instagram, some interesting marketing tactics we're
Cool.
playing around with there. And if anybody that's listening is interested in, this group that we're going to be forming, that's going to be free, about mindset and breathing and movement and yoga and how all those things or whatever other things people are doing help sustain us as business people, reach out to me. And then when we open up the group, I'd be happy to send you information.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being here today. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad we were able to meet and talk. This is a great segment and people are just like, love it.
Awesome. It was my pleasure. It was so great talking to you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And thank everyone else for joining us. Again, I'm Regina McCann Hess, president of Forge Wealth. My website is forgewealth.com. And I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Forge Wealth. And on LinkedIn, I'm Regina McCann Hess. Go make it a great day. Thank you so much. Bye bye.